Looking back, I can pinpoint the exact moment I should have seen it coming. But when you're buried in spreadsheets at midnight, trying to save a company that's been bleeding money for 3 quarters straight, you don't notice a knife until already in your back. And believe me, I spent a lot of midnights buried in those spreadsheets. I'm talking about the family business. Construction, not the glamorous kind you see on HGTV, where everything's clean and everyone's smiling. The real deal: concrete, permits, municipal contracts, and crews that start at dawn whether you're ready or not. My father, Richard Sterling, built Sterling Construction from the ground up. Literally. Started with a used backhoe and a dream in 1987. By the time I was old enough to remember, we had 20 trucks and a reputation for finishing on time and under budget. I grew up on those job sites. Not because I wanted to, because that's just what we did. While other kids spent summers at camp or playing video games, I spent mine learning the difference between load-bearing walls and partition walls. I was calculating concrete volume before I hit puberty. I knew how to read blueprints before I could drive. My father would take me out on Saturdays, hand me a clipboard, and tell me to pay attention, not just watch. So I did. I watched men argue about rebar placement. I learned why you never pour concrete in freezing temperatures. I understood that construction isn't just about building. It's about problem solving in real time when everything's going wrong. College was supposed to be my escape. I went to state, studied structural engineering, graduated top of my class. Had 3 job offers waiting: Denver, Austin, even one in Seattle with starting salary that made my father whistle when I showed him the letter. "That's real money," he said, tapping the paper with his index finger. Then he looked at me over his reading glasses, the kind he only wore when reviewing contracts. "But who's going to keep this place running when I'm gone?" That was the thing about my father. He never directly asked for anything, just planted seeds and waited for you to water them yourself. And like an idiot, I grabbed the watering can. So I came home, 23 years old, eager, ready to prove I belonged. I thought I'd walk into some kind of structured training program, maybe shadow the operations manager, learn the business side, work my way up properly. Like normal companies do. Instead, I got a desk in the corner of the warehouse office, literally next to the supply closet, a laptop from 2009 that took 15 minutes to boot up, and a filing system that belonged in a museum. The Smithsonian would have rejected it for being too outdated. "Figure out," Dad said on day 1. "That's how you learn." So I did, for 8 years. 8 years of 14-hour days. 8 years of weekend emergencies and midnight phone calls from panic site managers. 8 years of being the first one in and the last one out. I digitized everything. Built a project management system from scratch because Dad refused to pay for software he didn't understand. Trained the crews on safety protocols that actually made sense instead of the don't die approach we've been using. Landed our first government contract, a school renovation that opened doors we've been knocking on for a decade. The school project alone was a nightmare. 6 months of navigating bureaucracy, attending zoning board meetings, revising proposals. I rewrote that bid 17 times. 17. I have a draft saved with timestamps to prove it. But we got it, and we delivered it 2 weeks early and 8% under budget. Revenue tripled in those 8 years. Our safety rating went from acceptable to exemplary. We went from being that local outfit to the company other contractors called when they needed someone reliable, when they needed someone who wouldn't screw up. I built relationships with suppliers, negotiated better rates, streamlined our subcontractor network. I turned our handful of dusty 3-ring binders into a searchable digital archive. I created training modules. I implemented quality control checkpoints. And through it all, my father nodded approvingly but never said much. That was fine, I told myself. I didn't need praise. I needed progress. I needed to prove I was the right choice for the future. Turns out, I was proving it to the wrong audience. Then Marcus came home, my older brother, the golden child, the one who'd spent his 20s finding himself across Southeast Asia, Europe, South America. He sent postcards. Sometimes he video called on Christmas. Mostly, He was just this abstract concept. The brother who got out, who was doing something more meaningful than getting dirt under his fingernails. Marcus was always the charming one. The one who could talk his way into anything, out of anything. High school teachers loved him. He'd show up late with some elaborate excuse, and they'd laugh it off. Meanwhile, I'd be on time with my homework done and barely getting gnawed. He went to college for 2 years, declared it wasn't aligned with his journey, and left the backpack through Thailand. Then it was a yoga retreat in India, then consulting for a startup in Berlin that folded after 6 months. Then something vague in Argentina that he described as social entrepreneurship, but never quite explained. Our parents funded most of it. By the way, not all, but enough. Every time he ran low, he'd call home with some story about an amazing opportunity if he could just stay another few months. And they'd wire the money. I never said anything. Wasn't my place, right? I was building the family business. Marcus was building. Well, I'm still not sure what Marcus was building. A really impressive passport stamp collection, maybe. When Dad had his heart attack 3 years ago, Marcus didn't come home. Sent flowers to the hospital with a card that said, "Thinking of you," and "Sorry I can't be there, tied up with a project." I was the one sleeping in the ICU waiting room chair, running the company from my phone, making sure payroll cleared while managing a crisis. I was the one who held Mom's hand while the doctors explained the surgery risks. I was the one who made decisions about medical care because someone had to. Marcus sent a very thoughtful voice message, though very heartfelt. I'm sure that was helpful. So when Mom called and said, "Family dinner, Saturday, important news," I figured maybe Dad was finally ready to talk succession planning. Maybe after 8 years of proving myself, after literally keeping the company alive during his recovery, we'd have that conversation. I was half right about the succession part. I showed up at my parents' house that Saturday evening around 6. Marcus was already there, looking tanned and relaxed, wearing linen like he'd just stepped off a yacht. Probably had. He hugged me, one of those brief, backslapping hugs that feels more like a photo op than genuine affection. Little brother, looking corporate. I was wearing jeans and a company polo. I'd literally come from a site inspection where we discovered foundation drainage issues that needed immediate attention. I smelled like dirt and concrete dust. Marcus smelled like expensive cologne and coconut. Dinner was Mom's lasagna, her comfort food. I should have recognized that as a warning sign right there. She only makes lasagna when she's anxious. Last time was when they had to tell us Grandpa's cancer was terminal. We made small talk. Marcus talked about his consulting work, which as far as I could tell meant giving vague advice to startups in Barcelona for equity that would never materialize. He name-dropped a lot. Mentioned someone he'd met at a conference in Lisbon. Used words like synergy and disruption without any apparent irony. Dad asked me about the Riverside project. I gave him the update. On schedule, under budget, client happy. He nodded like I'd told him the weather forecast. Marcus asked what the Riverside project was. I'd been working on it for 18 months. He didn't even know it existed. Then came dessert. Tiramisu, another red flag I missed. Dad cleared his throat in that way he does when he's about to say something he's been rehearsing. So, we want to talk to you both about the future of Sterling Construction. Here it was. Finally, 8 years of waiting. Your mother and I have been thinking about stepping back. Not retiring completely, but transitioning into more of an advisory role. I nodded. Made sense. He was 67. Had a heart condition. Earned his rest. And we've decided, he continued, not quite meeting my eyes, which should have been clue number 3, that Marcus is going to step in as CEO. The room went silent, except for the sound of my fork hitting my plate. Not dropped dramatically. Just set down carefully, deliberately, because if I held any longer, I might have thrown it. Marcus is going to bring fresh energy, Mom added quickly, too quickly, like she'd been waiting for her cue. New perspectives. He's got all that international experience. International experience doing what exactly? The words came out sharper than I intended. Actually, no. They came out exactly as sharp as I intended. Marcus smiled. Calm. Unruffled. He'd probably practiced this too. I know this is sudden, But I've actually been preparing for this. Dad and I have been talking for months. Months. They'd been planning this for months. While I was fixing their problems, closing their deals, saving their contracts, they were plotting my replacement. My mother was looking at her plate. My father was looking at the wall. Marcus was looking at me with this expression of practiced sympathy. I'm still going to be involved, right? I tried to keep my voice level, professional, like we were in a business meeting, and not sitting at the same dinner table where I'd eaten 1,000 meals growing up. Operations manager? VP. Dad finally looked at me. Of course. We need you. You're the backbone of this operation. Backbone, not the brain, not the leader, not the future. The backbone. The thing that holds everything up while remaining completely invisible, uncredited, and easily taken for granted. You'll report directly to Marcus, Dad continued. Help him transition. Show him the ropes. You know the business better than anyone. Right. I'd teach my replacement how to do the job I'd been doing perfectly well for 8 years. That made perfect sense. I finished my tiramisu. Mechanical bites. Chewing, swallowing, tasting nothing. Told them congratulations. Thanked Mom for dinner. Drove home in complete silence. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying every conversation, every late night. Every time I'd sacrifice plans or relationships or sleep to fix something at Sterling. Every time I'd told myself it would matter eventually. Every time I believed that hard work and loyalty and competence would be enough. The anger came later. Not hot, explosive anger, cold, calculating anger. The kind that makes you very, very careful about your next moves. The kind that makes you start thinking strategically instead of emotionally. Monday morning, Marcus started. He showed up in a suit to a construction company, and immediately began talking about rebranding and modernizing our image. He had a notebook full of ideas. Most of them started with the word reimagine. By Wednesday, he'd hired a marketing consultant, some guy from Chicago who'd never set foot on a construction site, but had transformed a boutique hotel chain's brand identity. He charged $15,000 for a logo refresh and new business cards. By Friday, Marcus was talking about pivoting toward sustainable luxury developments and experiential living spaces. I didn't even know what that meant. Neither did he, I suspect. I watched. I listened. I documented everything. Kept my head down. Said yes when appropriate, and I'll look into that when it wasn't. The crew noticed a change immediately. They'd come to me quietly, near the tool shed or in the parking lot before heading home. Is this guy serious? Dave, our longest-running site supervisor, asked me after Marcus suggested we start company Instagram to showcase our culture. Give him time to adjust. I said, even though I didn't believe it. The real problem started in week 3. I needed the files for Riverside Commons, our biggest active project. A mixed-use development worth $12 million that we've been building for 18 months. My project, from the initial bid to the current phase. I'd personally negotiated with 4 different city departments to make it happen. I went to access the shared drive. Locked out. Password changed. No notification. Just a red error message that said, access denied. I called IT. Well, IT, we had one guy, Steve, who handled our servers and also did the bookkeeping. Sorry, Steve said, sounding genuinely apologetic. New access protocols. You'll need to request permission through the CEO's office. I need permission to access projects I'm currently managing? That's what the memo said, yeah. There was a memo. Marcus had sent out a company-wide email about information security and proper channels. I'd skimmed it. Apparently, I shouldn't have. I walked into Marcus's new corner office, my father's old office, redecorated with minimalist furniture and motivational posters about innovation and disruption. The plant in the corner was fake. Dad always kept real plants. Said if you couldn't keep a plant alive, you had no business managing construction projects. I need the Riverside files. Marcus looked up from his MacBook. Brand new, probably $3,000. Oh, right. I've been meaning to talk to you about that project. Talk to me about it? I built that project from scratch. Exactly. And you did great foundational work. Foundational. Like it was just the beginning and not the entire thing. But I think it's time for some fresh eyes. I'm bringing in a development consultant to review everything and make recommendations. Recommendations for what? We're 70% complete and ahead of schedule. Ahead of the old schedule, he corrected, like he was explaining math to a child. I think we can be more ambitious. Push the boundaries of what we're delivering. The boundaries we're delivering. The project had binding contracts, city permits, architectural plans, and scheduled inspections. You can't just push boundaries because you feel like it. The clients are happy, I said slowly. The permits are approved. The inspections are passing. What exactly are you planning to change? That's what the consultant is for, to explore possibilities. That's when I knew he wasn't just taking over. He was erasing me. Piece by piece, project by project, he was going to take everything I had built and slap his name on it. I spent that night creating backups. Every file I'd ever created, every proposal, every schematic, every email chain. 8 years of work. I downloaded it all onto an external drive and stored it in my apartment safe, the same safe where I kept my passport and birth certificate. Then I organized it, created a master index, time-stamped everything, made it searchable, cross-referenced, airtight. If this was going to be a war, I was going to have ammunition. 3 weeks later, I walked into the office and found Marcus in the conference room with the Riverside developers. The big glass-walled room we use for important client meetings. Through the window, I could see them, 3 people from Riverside Development Group, the clients who trusted us with their biggest project. On the screen behind Marcus was my presentation, my slides, my phasing plan, my cost projections, the color scheme I'd chosen, the charts I'd built, the timeline I'd calculated. He'd changed the title slide to say, "Prepared by Marcus Sterling, CEO." I stood in the doorway. Nobody noticed me at first. They were all focused on Marcus, who was in full performance mode, gesturing at the screen with confidence. As you can see, Marcus was saying, "We've really optimized the timeline here. This phasing approach is going to save you approximately 15% on carrying costs." My phasing approach. The one I developed over 3 months of analysis, looking at weather patterns, material delivery schedules, and labor availability. I'd modeled 17 different scenarios before landing on this one. And the sustainability features we've integrated. He continued, clicking to the next slide, my slide, showing the energy efficiency improvements I'd researched. These are going to position Riverside Commons as a leader in green development. I'd spent 2 weeks attending green building seminars to understand those features. 2 weeks of my own time, evenings and weekends, because I knew sustainability was becoming important to clients. He clicked again. Another slide. My risk assessment matrix. My contingency planning. My vendor negotiations. All of it marked, prepared by Marcus Sterling. I pulled out my phone and took photos. Discreetly, from the doorway, zooming in on the title slide, on the presentation footer, on Marcus pointing to his work. Then I left. I didn't storm in, didn't interrupt, didn't cause a scene, just documented and walked away. Because that's what you do when you're building a case. That night, I met with Elena Rodriguez, a lawyer I'd worked with on contract reviews. Sharp, methodical, the kind of attorney who read every word of every clause and found the loopholes others missed. We met at a coffee shop downtown, far from anyone who might know us. I showed her everything. My original files with timestamps showing creation dates from months ago. Marcus's presentation with today's date. The metadata proving I'd created every single document he was now claiming as his own. "This is textbook intellectual property theft," she said, scrolling to the files on my laptop. "Especially since you created it as part of your employment, but he's claiming authorship. In client meetings, no less. Do you want to sue?" "Not yet. I want leverage." She smiled. The kind of smile that probably made opposing counsel nervous. "Then let me draw up something more interesting." What she created was beautiful. A formal cease and desist. outlining every instance of stolen work, backed by irrefutable digital evidence, file creation dates, revision histories, email chain showing me sending draft for review, calendar entries showing my meetings with consultants and vendors, bank records showing charges to my personal credit card for research materials. It was airtight, undeniable, devastating. But more importantly, she crafted a settlement proposal. I wanted 35% ownership of Sterling Construction, carved from my father's shares, not Marcus's. A significant stake, yes, but not unreasonable given 8 years of work and documented proof that I built most of what made the company valuable. I wanted the title of Chief Operations Officer with full authority over project management, vendor relations, and business development, not reporting to Marcus, equal to Marcus. And I wanted it in writing that any future marketing materials would properly credit the work I'd done. Every project I'd led, every system I'd built, every contract I'd won. He's going to fight this, Elena warned. Let him. We sent copies to Marcus, my father, and Sterling's corporate attorney. Certified mail. Return receipt requested. Very official. Then I sent a separate email to the Riverside developers. Very simple. Very factual. Very professional. Dear Riverside Development Team, I wanted to make you aware that the presentation you saw last week was based on my original project documentation, created over 18 months of development. I've attached the time-stamped originals for your review and verification. I remain fully committed to this project's success and am available if you have questions about any technical details or project history. Best regards, Thomas Sterling. Professional, polite, devastating. Attached were the original files, showing creation dates, my name and the metadata, my email as a sender of every draft shared internally. I CC'd our corporate attorney. Not Marcus, not my father, just the legal department. So there was a record. My phone rang 47 times that day. I counted. I didn't answer any of them. The next morning, I got an email from Sterling's attorney requesting an emergency meeting. 10 a.m., their office downtown. Mandatory attendance. I showed up at exactly 10 a.m. Not 9:58, not 10:02. Exactly 10 o'clock. Punctuality is a power move when everyone else is panicking. Elena came with me. Marcus looked like he'd aged 5 years overnight. Circles under his eyes, shirt wrinkled, hair uncombed. My father looked furious, but not at me. That was interesting. His jaw was tight, that vein on his temple pulsing the way it did when a subcontractor screwed up. My mother wasn't there. Probably at home, pretending this wasn't happening. We sat in uncomfortable silence until the attorney spoke. Corporate attorney Bernard Mitchell. Old school, three-piece suit. The kind of lawyer who'd been practicing since before email existed. We've reviewed the documentation Mr. Sterling provided, Bernard said, opening a folder thick with printed evidence. His claims are substantiated. The work in question was clearly his creation. The timestamps are verifiable. The metadata is conclusive. He was an employee. Marcus said weakly, desperately, work for hire. Work for hire doesn't extend to fraudulent authorship claims. Elena interrupted smoothly, not even looking up from her own notes. Your brother didn't just use the company's work. He explicitly claimed personal credit for someone else's creation in front of clients. That's fraud. It's also potentially defamation, depending on how we frame it. Marcus's face went pale. There's also the matter of the Riverside developers, Bernard continued, looking at Marcus over his glasses. They requested clarification about project leadership. They're concerned about continuity and accuracy of information. Translation. They didn't trust Marcus anymore. One email from me had undermined whatever confidence he'd tried to build. My father finally spoke. His voice was quiet, controlled, but I could hear the anger underneath. What do you want? I slid the settlement proposal across the table. The same one Elena had prepared. Printed on good paper, professionally bound. He read it in silence. Marcus tried to read over his shoulder, but Dad shifted the document away. When he finished, he looked at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. Like he was seeing me as something other than a convenient solution to his problems. You built all of this, he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Yes. The government contracts, the safety systems, the project management infrastructure, the client relationships. Yes. The Riverside project, from bid to execution. Yes. He nodded slowly, then turned to Marcus, his oldest son, his first choice. Did you actually create anything for that presentation? Marcus opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. I was synthesizing information, pulling together. That's a no, Dad said flatly. He turned to Bernard. Drop the papers. He gets what he's asking for. Dad, Marcus started, but there was no conviction in it. Just a reflexive objection of someone who knew he'd already lost. You lied to clients, Marcus. The disappointment in my father's voice was crushing. I almost felt bad for him. Almost. You lied to me. You took credit for your brother's work. Work he spent years creating. I didn't think it mattered who. It matters, Dad said. It always matters. That's the first thing I should have taught you. The settlement took 2 weeks to finalize. During those 2 weeks, Marcus didn't come to the office. Claimed he was working remotely. I think he just couldn't face anyone. I got my 35%. I got my title. I got a formal acknowledgement in company records and marketing materials, crediting the systems I'd built, the contracts I'd won, the infrastructure I created. Marcus kept the CEO title, but with significantly limited authority. He could handle marketing and client relations, the schmoozing part, the part that didn't require actually knowing how to build anything. I controlled operations, project management, development, and finance. Essentially, I got the company. He got a business card and a salary. The interesting thing, once the dust settled, Sterling Construction ran better than ever. Turns out, when you let the person who actually built the systems run them, things work pretty well. We finished Riverside Commons 2 months early and came in 6% under budget. The developers were so impressed they signed us for 2 additional projects, another mixed-use development, and a boutique hotel renovation. Word spread. Other developers started calling. They wanted the guy who'd actually done the work, not the guy who'd taken credit for it. Within 6 months, our project pipeline had doubled. Within a year, revenue was up 40%. Marcus and I don't talk much. We exchange necessary information in brief emails. At company events, we're cordial, professional. That's enough. My father apologized. Eventually, it took him 6 months. We were at a site inspection, just the 2 of us, walking to the frame of a new community center. He stopped in the middle of the concrete floor, hands in his pockets, looking up at the steel beams. I should have seen it, he said quietly. Should have seen what you were building all those years. I didn't say anything at first, just looked at the steel beams above us, the careful spacing, the structural integrity that would hold up this building for decades. You taught me to build things at last. I finally said, I just applied it to the company. He nodded, cleared his throat. You know, Sterling and Sons doesn't have to mean just one son. I looked at him. I'm adding you to the company name, he continued. Sterling and Sons. Plural. Official. It's going in the incorporation papers next month. It wasn't everything. It wasn't an apology for the years of being overlooked or the betrayal of handing everything to Marcus. But it was something. It was acknowledgement. It was respect. Finally earned and finally given. Thank you, I said. We stood there for another minute. 2 men who'd spent years not understanding each other, finally on the same page. Then we went back to work. Because that's what we do. We build. These days, I get to the office at 7. I walk the sites. I review the bids. I solve problems. I build things that last. And every time I see our company trucks roll past with Sterling and Sons painted on the side, plural, both sons acknowledged, I think about that kid on the job sites, calculating concrete volume, trying to prove he belonged. He doesn't have to prove anything anymore. He built the proof himself. Literally, with timestamps and metadata and 8 years of sweat equity that nobody could steal or erase or take credit for. The blueprints were always mine. I just had to remind everyone who drew them